What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Kai back here with another video, and I know I haven't made a video in a minute now, but I'm ready to get this shit going, man. I'm ready to take this more serious, so I'm gonna put out a video 1 to 2 times a week. You can expect that. But with that being said, this video is entirely about the Portland Trailblazers, and if you did not know, I'm a huge Portland Trailblazer fan, right? So I've watched every game for the past 6 years, right? Since Terry Stotts took over. This video is gonna have a lot about Terry Stotts. I'm saying that right now. So let's get it started right off with Terry Stotts with the number one thing. Number one, the Blazers, Neil O'Shea up top, they need to fire Terry Stotts. I think the Terry Stotts era needs to come to an end. You know, he comes in and they basically say this guy's an offensive coach. He's got really good sets, which to his credit, he's had a lot of success with players that are really good at scoring, and he set them up, and we've been really good at scoring the past, 5 years. We've been near the top. However, we're always at the bottom of defense, right? And whether you want to say that's a personnel thing or not, it's very obvious that coaching goes, coincides with roster, personnel. But I think that a sign of a good coach is a coach taking who he has and adjusting his game plan for those players to their strengths, right? That's what I think all the great coaches do. They implement a system, but if the system isn't working, then they adapt. The NBA is a league of adaptation and adapting to what's new and what's working. And I flat out don't think Terry Stotts does any of those things. 3-4 years ago, right, when we played the Pelicans in the first round, we were the 3 seed, they were the 6 seed. I think the game separation was less than 2 or 3 games, so we were pretty even matched up, right? We go in that first game, and I think it was close, right? I think the game was close, but basically what the Pelicans decided to do, right, they had Rondo and Drew Holiday at the time, 2 very good defensive guards. They basically did, in the playoffs, what they did was they double-teamed Lillard off of any pick and roll, knowing that the only offense we ran was pick and roll and a very tiny bit of pin downs and off-ball movement, but very slightly. It was basically pick and roll. That's all we did, right? So they double-teamed Lillard on every single pick and roll, and they forced Aminu to kill us on threes. They forced Harkless to kill us on threes, and they flat-out could not. So we get swept that series. We go down the first 2 games. The next 2 games, you would hope, hey, maybe we should try something new. Maybe we should not have Lillard bring the ball up every play. Maybe we should have him come off some screens so he can get open. But no, we run the same thing that we lost the first 2 games. Nikola Mirotic goes off for 30 in game 3, and then AD closes us out with 47. So we get swept, and that's Dame Lillard's biggest blemish on his playoff record, right? He played terrible. No debate there. However, I really think we could have benefited and played much better had Terry Stotts adjusted his game plan in the playoffs like good coaches do. The other thing I want to talk about with Terry Stotts is his defensive scheme, right? Because his whole scheme, right, is we play people on the perimeter, right? We don't have really good perimeter defenders, at least the past 2 years, right? We got no perimeter defense, so they go by, and then he has the big sink to the paint. So it gives up wide open mid-range jump shots, hoping that they drive to the paint and we get blocks, because we've had Whiteside and Nurkic, those are good rim protectors. But we have no real defense on the perimeter. Now, the one positive thing I will say about Terry Stotts, at least for this year, is he's had to deal with just an incredible amount of injuries to key rotation players. I mean, this year alone, Zach Collins, Rodney Hood, Nurkic most of the year. We had fucking Anthony Tolliver and Mario Hezonja playing big minutes, right? That's enough said right there. And Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum really like Terry Stotts, and I think he's a good dude. I think, he's got his heart in the right place or whatever, but I just don't think that he's the fit for this team anymore. I think we've reached our ceiling. I think our ceiling was last year in the Western Conference Finals with Terry Stotts running this system, and I think that we should switch things up now before it's too late and our stars are out of their prime. I've watched enough third quarter breakdowns, and I don't know what they're saying at halftime, but it doesn't ever work. We always come out super slow in the third quarter. Think about the Warriors. Think about how they're known for coming out in the third quarter and just dominating teams, right? Because they go in at halftime, and they got Steve Kerr, who is a spectacular coach, and he tells them, hey, this is what they're doing. This is how we're going to adjust and beat these teams. And that's what great coaches and great teams do. I don't think Terry Stotts does any of that. I don't think he's a good defensive coach. I don't think he makes any adjustments at all. I don't like his rotations. I don't like Dame Lillard playing the first 12 minutes of the game. I don't like that. I just think that it's time to switch things up. I think it's time to really go all out and try to win a championship, and I think that starts with the head coach. But I just talked about Terry Stotts for 5.5 minutes. Never thought I'd say that. But anyway, let's get on. Let's move on to the next thing, right? And I think the next thing starts with a more complementary roster. I don't think the roster is built very well around Damian Lillard. I think the formula to winning with a really high potent scoring point guard like him in his prime is to surround him with 3-and-D guys. And I just don't, we don't have any of those people, right? I think Rodney Hood and Trevor Ariza would be really good for us right there. But Trevor Ariza is way out of his prime. And Rodney Hood's a little short to be guarding, LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard. I think our primary thing we should do this offseason is, number one, I think we have the 16th pick. If a guy like Devin Vassell out of Florida State is there, was a spectacular three-point shooter and he's really lengthy, he's got good defensive potential, I think that's a guy we should go after in the draft, because we just don't have that much money in free agency to do anything. I think we draft a guy like that if he's still there at 16. I think you need to re-sign Carmelo Anthony, give him like a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. Sign him to the mid-level. Sign him to the mid-level if it's available, right? If he's willing to take that. Then I think we retain Whiteside's bird rights. I think when you got a guy like Nurkic who's had a bunch of injuries in the past, whether Whiteside wants to stay here or not, I think we offer him, the most that we can, because I think that's the best option in free agency we're going to get. I think we throw him, 2-year, 18 mil if he's willing to take that. You can just tell by the eye test, Nurkic has a much higher ceiling than Whiteside. Whiteside's very fucking slow, lethargic, doesn't give a lot of energy half the time. But I think a guy like that off the bench can be really beneficial. I think a guy like that off the bench is a championship, contending team. A team that competes for a championship always has a guy coming off the bench that can have a breakout game in the playoffs, and I think Whiteside can do that. In Game 1 against the Lakers, he was really impactful. And I think the thing with Carmelo Anthony is he had a spectacular season with us. He exceeded all expectations I had, all expectations I'm sure most of the team had, the coaching staff. He played really well. He hit a lot of spot-up three-pointers, and if he can hit that at the clip he did this year, he can 100% come back and be an impact player next year. I don't think he's a starting quality 3 or 4 next year. I think we got better options there. But if he's actually willing to take on the role and potentially win a fucking 6 Man of the Year award or something, I think that would be awesome. Now, I don't think you can talk about the Blazers without talking about potentially trading CJ McCollum, right? Because that's a very popular thing to do. But I don't think that this is the year to trade him. I think you give it 1 more year. I know we keep saying that, right? 1 more year, but I think it's 1 more year. I think next year, if we can bring back Dame CJ, bring back Carmelo, draft a guy like Devin Vassell, have him be an impact player early. You got Nurkic and Collins coming back. You got Rodney Hood still. I don't know. We're going to still have Trevor Ariza. He might be a trade piece, but if he's still there, you have him. I think that's a lot of quality players. And you got Gary Trent Jr. too, who I really like at the 2 spot, 3-and-D guy, coming off the bench probably. But let's talk about CJ McCollum flat out. If Gary Trent Jr. can come in next year and fucking average 15 points a game off the bench to start the year, I wouldn't be surprised if they shop CJ McCollum. Because you got to remember, we just signed him to a huge deal. Dame already has a huge deal. Gary Trent's on a very affordable deal. I wouldn't be surprised if we move CJ McCollum. But personally, I don't think it's time unless there's just a trade out there that's unbelievable. If Ben Simmons is available, I'd trade CJ McCollum for Ben Simmons instantly. Ben Simmons just made all defensive first team. That dude's a stud on defense. He'd be a great lob threat to Dame. He obviously can't shoot, but you got Gary Trent out there. I think you could make it work with Ben Simmons, but I don't think that's going to happen. But if it did, that would be 100% great for the Blazers. But to summarize, basically, I think in order to get over the hump, right, because that's what the Blazers need to do. They're stuck in this good, not great, little area of teams right now. I think they're top 10, but I don't think they're top 5. And top 5 teams are basically the only championship contenders most year. But I think basically in order to reach that, I think Terry Stotts needs to get out of there. I think we need to stop being so patient with Dame Lillard's prime. He's not going to be a fucking top 2 point guard for the next 5 years. I think you got 3 more years of this potentially. So I think the time is now. I think Terry Stotts needs to go. I think we need to revamp our roster next season. Although we do have a really much better roster on paper when players are healthy. So I think you give it 1 more year with this roster. You fire Terry Stotts, bring in someone new, maybe a little more defensive coach. You hope that the wings can play better defense and we could not be dead last in defense and top 3 in offense. And I think you run it back with this team. I think Dame, CJ, Carmelo, Rodney Hood, Zach Collins, and Nurkic can make a run. I don't think it's time to trade CJ McCollum yet, but if an offer is out there and it's just too good to pass up, take it. But other than that, man, I think the best thing to do is just give it another year, and then I think it's time to blow it up. If we don't do anything good next year, if we make the 7th seed and get swept in the first round, I think then it's time to blow it up and just try to do whatever you can to win a championship before our best player in franchise history is too old to do it. So that's about it. So if you made it to this part of the video, I greatly appreciate you. Drop a Blazers in 6 in the comments below, and like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all.
Fucking trash. You're dog shit. So you have a stank toenail. That's why I figured your belly button last night.
Right.
You're dog.
You liked it though.
That's good.